Welcome to Kopites Calling with Dave and Nik. After a little bit of a break, we're back and we're ready to reignite discussion of all topics Reds related. Um, Nick, the Jurgen Klopp era has officially ended, and Arne has slotted in as the head coach. But before we kind of move forward with the things we want to talk about today, there are a few stats that I think we need to just kind of tie up the Jurgen Klopp last season, the 23-24 season. I found this one to be extremely interesting, Nick. Um, Liverpool had the best home record in 23-24 Premier League, winning 15 of their 19 games at Anfield. 48 points collected is better than Man City.
I mean, it's a fortress. It's a place that even whenever the consistency of us going down in a game, as common as it was this year, unfortunately, at home we still always found the second gear. So I'm not shocked by that whatsoever. I mean, Anfield. I mean, people want to say things about the atmosphere. I could care less. Anfield is a fortress.
Absolutely. And then one other thing, Nick, that I found to be just absolutely incredible. Virgil van Dijk in the 23-24 season produced the highest percentage of successful aerial duels since Opta started collecting data in 2012. Virgil won 140 of his 172 aerial engagements for an 81.4% success rate. That's crazy.
I mean, the first word that comes to mind is just colossal. I mean, he's a colossus. I mean, I mean, yeah, that's I did not know that, but that is an insane stat. It's insane.
It just go. I mean, it just goes to show what we have with that guy. I mean, there's a reason he's the captain of Liverpool. There's the reason he's the captain of the Netherlands. It's because of the way he projects himself, the way he is not only on the pitch but off. And then when you have these kind of stats, you're just kind of going, you don't think about it because with Virgil, it just seems so routine.
Exactly, and that's the reason his bar is so high, and that's why people want to try to compare him to other center backs. I mean, they can compare all they want, but it's because it's so routine to him that other center backs that are doing things that he does on a routine basis look amazing because it may be the first time they see a center back do something like that. And it's like, well, guess what? We get that week in, week out from Virgil. You know what I mean? We're seeing that every game. So I just the comparisons they are what they are. I mean, yeah, whatever. We conceded a bunch of goals this season. I'm not going to deny that, but Virgil's influence on every game was always there.
Absolutely. I mean, if you just watching games, I mean, he commands, and I mean literally commands through his voice.
Yeah.
He commands the back row. I mean, you can see him. He's constantly engaged with his defense.
Yep.
I
Vocal.
love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
It's. I mean, honestly, it's one thing that he probably learned a lot from Hendo, and Hendo was the captain. Because say what you want about Hendo's end to his time at Liverpool, and I'm sure we've covered this on Kopites Calling before. But Hendo was a leader. He was a vocal leader, and I think that Virgil hearing that presence in the midfield of all places probably rubbed off on him in a very positive way. So
Right.
I think
Right.
that he did learn a lot from Hendo in that regard about you have to be vocal 90% of the game if you're a captain. I mean, it's crazy to think. I mean, you go to a soccer game and like you think it's going to be quiet, but like there's players talk all the time. You know what I mean?
Right.
And for
Right.
the casual viewers that don't, that are watching on TV and they don't really understand, but there's so much communication that has to be had during a soccer match, football match, that your captain has to be at the center of.
Right, right. And I think Nick, the season that Pickford pretty much took him out on a what we've already talked about. My favorite person in the world,
It
Pickford.
is, yeah. I hear you're
Um,
gonna send him a nice little
yeah,
card. I'm sure he's a father.
yeah,
Did you send him a
yeah.
Father's Day card?
um, but but I think that was another reason. I think when Virgil went down, it affected Allison's game as well. He didn't have that in front of him with a person who is, in control of the defense. And I think that was another. It was a significant blow not only to the team in general, but primarily to Allison as his goalkeeper.
100%. You hit the nail on the head. I mean, and it's not just the fact that Virgil went out that season, but multiple center backs went out that season to the point where Hendo had to go back there. Reese Williams, Matt Phillips. I mean, it can kind of make a goalkeeper a loss. 100%.
Yeah.
I mean, and again, even though Virgil was around this season and he was, very good this season, we did concede goals, but I don't think that was again, we can look back on the season as much as we want. I'm sure we have future things that we want to talk about, obviously, with RNA coming
Yeah.
in. But when you look back at the season, we conceded goals. I don't know if that was so much of a individual thing or a tactical thing. And I mean,
Right.
I hate to say
Right.
it, right? But we've touched upon this on Kopites Calling, right? I mean, Klopp had made his decision, and I think that while heartbreaking, me and you, Dave, agree that it was the right time
Right.
for fresh new tactics, fresh new defensive structure, stuff like that to come in. And I think Klopp realized that. I mean, Klopp is mature enough to understand that, he realized that his philosophies were just done at Liverpool.
Right.
It's just the truth. It is just the truth. I'm gonna, of course, I was emotional. We were all emotional, especially after the episode they recorded, on his final match. But Klopp is a smart man, and he saw that this season was the right time.
Right, right. Hey, if you want to hear our take on that, you can go back and listen to the episode titled "Thanks, Boss," and that will
Exactly.
have our all of our discussion of what we thought of his final game. But you brought us into what I wanted to get into in this particular. I wanted to tie a nice little bow on the 23-24 season and then look forward. And I think it's important that we get a little bit of background on our new manager, Arnie Slot.
Absolutely.
So, what I kind of did a deep dive and kind of found out a little bit of information on Slot that I wanted to kind of know. You kind of want to know what your manager's background is.
100%.
Um, he played forward, came into a team called PEC Zwolle, and he was 17 years old when he came in, and he was a forward with a reputation as being a very good passer. He was such a good passer, Nick, that he actually has a move named for him, which is the Arne Slot pass, which is a slight deflection from a forward with his back to goal that splits the defense and releases a winger running off the ball. I thought that was just cool. I thought that was a really cool thing to hear.
You know what the craziest part about that is, and just visualizing it in my head, because I mean, I'm sure having played and you being a fan of the game, kind of reminds you of what Bobby did for Mo and Mane, right? I mean, he would
Right.
have this nice little cheeky flick on pass that had them running in on goal. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's just one of those things that it's funny. It is I don't know. I had no idea about that, but I mean,
Yeah.
it is very much you slot in your wingers, right? They're in on goal. You slot them in.
You slot them in. I love it, dude. I love it. You're with me. He was also heavily linked to the Tottenham Hotspur job to replace Antonio Conte in 23. I
Really?
mean, he was the guy they wanted. He instead signed a new contract with Feyenoord because Tottenham was out of Champions League and Feyenoord was going to be in the Champions League. So the lure of Champions League kept him at Feyenoord and out of Tottenham.
Well, I mean, that's just common sense, right? I mean, yeah,
Absolutely.
he would have gotten paid more. He would have had more resources, more money. But when you get the opportunity to manage in the Champions League with a smaller team with a lower budget like Feyenoord, it just makes sense to see if you can do it, right? I mean, and if you can do it and you can be successful, then I mean, you really have something as a manager. You want to
Right.
start. You can go to any of these clubs, and have money and have a budget and go buy players, but it's like, let me see if I can get my feet wet a little bit. Let me see if I can get
Right.
my feet wet a little bit and see if I can do this with a club that has a smaller budget, a smaller stadium, maybe not the history. Let me see if I can do this here. Because if I can make a statement here, then I can go to, and like, it's what happened.
Right.
That's exactly what segued into him coming to Liverpool. He was able to do that at a club that is in a league with Ajax. And when you think Dutch league, you only really think Ajax or PSV. You know what I mean? You don't
Right.
really think
Right.
about Feyenoord. I mean, and it's one of those things where, to be honest, that I watched many games whenever he was. I don't watch many Dutch league games at all. The only exposure I get to Dutch league teams is the Champions League. Because that's
Absolutely.
where we see them. So
Yes.
I mean, but then you see it. I mean, I'm sure you're going to go into it, Dave, about his accomplishments as their manager. And I mean, again, I think that he was able to do things at that club that club that isn't the Ajax or the PSV that really made a statement.
Right, right. Well, actually, I think we've already talked about his accomplishments beforehand. This was kind of more about kind of what he's like. And one of the things that I really enjoyed when I was doing this dive on him was he uses a high pressing attacking style. And right there, he won me over. I'm sitting there going, that's what I want to see from a Liverpool team.
Absolutely.
That's what we've kind of Jurgen instilled with his heavy metal football. And I like the fact that this is also the style that Arne uses.
Right.
Um,
I
from
mean,
from what they say about him, Nick, he has a fierce work ethic. I mean, they say that guy is, essentially lives at the training ground. He watches every training session. He is obsessive in his studying of future opponents. What else do you want? That's what I want as well. When I was reading this, Nick, I was getting excited, and I think for what you said earlier, you know, Jurgen was kind of done, and he kind of knew it, and so now we have this. One of the things that he has said, Nick, and I love this as well. This is a statement from Arne Slot. You have to ensure that you create 4 times as many chances as your opponents and work twice as hard.
that's, I mean, that's a coach that I want to, like Klopp, run through a brick wall for. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
He wants to, and the cool part about this is like, while you said there is similarities in the heavy metal football that Jurgen brought to the high press. The interesting thing about it, right, is like, yeah, while there's similarities, the game of football, the game of soccer, is very minuscule. And what will be interesting to see is how Slot transitions his tactics to that style to Liverpool, right?
Right.
Klopp had his way of press. That doesn't mean it's the same way that Slot. I mean, that's the
Right.
finite details of this beautiful game, is that there's little tweaks that can go to a foot into any system, whether it's 4-3-3, whatever the case, 3-4-3, 3-5-2, whatever he wants to play. There's little intricacies that you can start to notice as a viewer. Maybe the casual
Right.
viewers don't know it, but someone like you, someone like me, that has been grown up watching soccer, grown up watching football, you can kind of notice the little intricacies that I can't wait to see in his system. Like that's something new that we are trying. Okay, that's awesome.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that was really well stated, Nick, because what happens in these things is you could put anything under an umbrella and say it's high press. We're going to play a high press. Every manager's version of a high press is slightly different.
Exactly.
It's
100%.
it's trying to like a style of music or something. I mean, you can call it whatever you want. You can call it hard rock, heavy metal, whatever you want to call it. Each band brings something a little different, even though it's under the same
Exactly.
genre of music. It can be called high press, but Arne's is going to be vastly different than what Jurgen's was.
Exactly.
And that's what I'm looking forward to. I'm also looking forward. You mentioned earlier, Feyenoord with a smaller budget. They're not mentioned in the big teams in the world. Liverpool is. So their budget's going to be a little more. Liverpool doesn't spend, but their budget's going to be a little more. I'm interested to see what Arne does with a budget that's a little bigger, and how the transfer market works for him. I want to talk about transfer market in a few minutes, but I did want to touch. There's a couple things happening right now, Nick. I think we need to discuss. The Euros are in full swing, and as of last Thursday, the Copa America started. For Liverpool, right now there are 10 players who are involved in the Euros. And I think I'm just going to, one of them's kind of out already, and that's Andy Robertson. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
his road ended when he met Dominic Soboslai's team, who is the captain of Hungary. But here's an interesting stat on Robbo. He has captained Scotland 49 times. And that's the highest in Scottish football. I mean, him being captain 49 times.
Yeah,
That's pretty cool. That's
that's all.
pretty cool.
It's you know, international tournaments are special for the players, obviously, because they get to represent the country that they were born and raised. It's just unfortunate that Robbo, with the talented player that he is, and of course he wants to represent Scotland. It's just unfortunate that they're just not that talented. You know what I mean? They were. They, Scotland's goal was to make the tournament. They made the tournament. You know, they wanted to be a team that maybe could make some noise. Who knows? You know, they were hoping for a result like, oh, let's go try to beat Germany, and that'll be our best result of the tournament. I mean, unfortunately, they got
Right.
smoked by Germany 4-0.
Right.
You know, so they wanted to be a team that got to the tournament. They got to the tournament, but you know, to your point, I think Robbo loves to play for Scotland. I mean,
Oh, he does.
Unfortunately, from a Liverpool perspective, every single time he plays for Scotland, he comes back hurt. So
Right.
hopefully now that he's essentially done at this tournament, and he doesn't look like he had any injury.
No.
Hopefully he gets a nice little break to go have a little holiday, a little vacation before heading over to Liverpool.
Well, you know, for me, Nick, the way I've been choosing to watch the Euros is which teams have Liverpool players. You know, I don't watch the Croatia, Slovenia game because there's nobody that but yesterday's game I watched pretty much all the way through. What I noticed was as good as Robertson was, and he had a fine game yesterday, played really well. They don't have striker. They had nobody up front. I mean, there's nothing that Scotland had. Really, to be honest with you, Hungary doesn't really have much up top either. Soboslai had a nice game as well. So both Liverpool players really represented themselves well yesterday in a really good game. It was a good game. I mean, Hungary beat them in the 99th minute. You know, I mean, that's a good game.
That's an entertaining game. Yeah, I mean, if you're losing at the death, that's always entertaining.
Right, right. So the other players that are involved are Trent Alexander-Arnold and Joe Gomez, both for England. Joe Gomez has not seen any minutes. Trent is just being unbelievably wasted by a ridiculous coach in Southgate. The guy has no idea what he has with Trent or how to use him. So therefore, Trent becomes the blame. He becomes the scapegoat for everything that's going wrong with England's soccer team. And what's going wrong with England's soccer team is the coach that has no identity or has any knowledge of actually how to, play the game. The way I see it, I think he's a useless manager who wastes talent. There's a lot of talent on that England team. There's a lot. They should not be they should not be as
tying Denmark. They should not be tying Denmark, right?
They should not be tying Denmark. There's no way.
And the funny part was I watched a little bit of that game because I believe it was last Thursday. Not only did it tie Denmark, but Denmark was the better team for 90%. I mean, it was an England side that has Harry Kane, Phil Foden, Bukayo Saka, Trent Alexander-Arnold, Kyle Walker, Declan Rice, John Stones, Jude Bellingham. The list goes on of the talented players right there that are being named. And they're literally getting taken to the cleaners by a Danish national team
right.
that what has Christian Eriksen and
right.
Kasper Schmeichel as the goalkeeper. The only two names people that come to name right now,
yeah.
Rasmus Højlund is the guy that plays for United that's their starting forward. I mean, it's crazy because England has this way about them of thinking that this Southgate guy, he's been the coach for 8 years. He's been the English national coach for 8 years. And I mean, I don't know where the entitlement of no offense. I mean, English fans, the England national team has not won anything since what? I mean, was I even alive? I think it was 96, 96 maybe. Dave,
Well,
I don't know.
92, they didn't even make the trip to the U.S.
Yeah, yeah.
when the U.S. hosted. But guess who takes the blame for this, and guess who's going to be dropped tomorrow? It's going to be Trent Alexander-Arnold.
Yep, they've already announced it. I mean, he's
They've
playing out of
already said it.
he's playing out of position because this whole experiment that he has to play midfield, it just doesn't work. Look,
Right.
Trent Alexander-Arnold is a right back. He is the most naturally gifted right back we've ever seen. He creates chances from right back position. He is not a back to goal center midfielder. He just isn't. He does not play with his back to goal as a right back. It makes no sense to think that we can take a guy that has this much talent, put him into an English national team, and say, okay, you're going to play midfield now. No,
Yeah.
because all the chances that he creates are from the right back position. I mean,
Right.
everyone wants to spew this nonsense that Kyle Walker is this great right back, and it's like, I can't name a single English player that has stood out at all this tournament. So
No, none.
what is the harm in putting Trent at right back against Slovenia tomorrow and seeing what actually happens? It just
Right.
why he gets blamed for a guy that's being out of position and playing, as best as he possibly. It's not that he's like. The thing is, he created. This is the funniest stat I found. He created the most chances out of all the midfielders in England's team against Denmark. He created the most chances. I think out of the whole England team, if I'm not mistaken, he created 4 chances. I believe the number. It's off the top of my head. So you're going to take that guy out of your team, and you're going to put in a guy, Conor Gallagher, who it's more of the same. It's like I don't know why he is being singled out. Declan Rice has been terrible. I mean, there's players that Jude Bellingham has been very underwhelming. I mean, this is
Yeah.
the Champions League with Real Madrid. Harry Kane hasn't scored a goal. Bukayo Saka, I can't remember who's, but it's like these guys. Phil Foden has not been playing that well. Phil Foden was one of the best players in the Premier League. So it's like the English national team as a whole are just not playing well, and they're
Right.
not playing well because they have a guy that's in charge that does not. It's similar. I mean, I'm sure we'll get into maybe a little bit of the U.S., but it's similar situations where he has all this talent and doesn't know how to utilize them.
Right.
I was shocked to see how many long balls were played out of England's back line just to clear their lines. This is an English national team that can barely string together five passes before losing it, and then they're just resort to playing long ball. I mean, this is a team that wants to beat you with possession, find the through passes, break the line, stuff like that, and they're not playing with freedom.
Right. Well, and you're going to blame Trent for all of their woes and all of their problems. Trent's the fall guy. He's the guy. Jurgen figured out a way to utilize him as a right back and that hybrid a little bit where he could get up in there when he needed to.
Yep.
And he was covered on the defensive side when that happened. Southgate to me is just he is. I think he's a manager that's drowning right now, personally.
You know what's funny about that? Sorry to interrupt, Dave, but
no, go right ahead, please.
You know what the funniest thing about Southgate, right, is, and I don't know if you saw this, and I know we have some other things we're going to talk about, obviously, so I don't want to take up too much time talking about England. It's almost funny that he thinks he says things that people will understand. This is a guy that in his post-match interview said, well, we haven't really found a replacement yet for Calvin Phillips in midfield. I'm sorry, Calvin Phillips, the midfielder that played at Leeds United, was in a relegation battle, then made a move to Man City, then made a move to Man City, where he played, 2 matches total? And then guess what? Went on loan to West Ham United this past season, and I think he got a couple red cards. But we're talking about this is the guy that you say that you haven't replaced yet in your team. Calvin Phillips, he doesn't even hold his pinky on his hand it doesn't hold anything close to what Trent has in his whole body. I mean, in terms of talent. I mean, and you almost think that like he's doing it as a joke, but like Southgate says something like that, and he's serious. I mean, Calvin Phillips. No offense, I'm sure he's a capable footballer for a mid-table Premier League team, but to say he is needed in the English national team at the Euros is crazy.
Absolutely. What I hope doesn't happen is that because of the way that we saw it a little bit with Darwin, where fans kind of started jumping on the bandwagon and saying that Darwin was terrible and Darwin this and Darwin that. We talked about it, last season of Kopites. I hope that this doesn't start messing with Trent. And then, I don't want his confidence to be shaken because he's the fall guy for this clown.
And if I was Trent, and no matter what happens, let's say England crash out of the tournament, don't win the tournament, which they're one of the favorites. They don't win, and he gets still treated as a scapegoat. If I'm Trent Alexander-Arnold, I am retiring from the international stage,
Absolutely.
and I'm waiting to see what they do for a manager, because there'll be a
Absolutely.
manager. There will be a manager whenever Southgate eventually leaves, or whatever happens after the Euros. There will be a manager that comes into that English. You can hope, and there will be a manager that comes in that will give Trent a call and be like, I'm not doing any of that BS. Like, come play
Right.
for me, and I will play you how you're supposed to be played. So,
Absolutely.
but if Southgate keeps his job by some miracle of the way, then if I'm Trent, I'm retiring from international duty, because it's just we're talking about a guy here that you think we're talking about online abuse for a guy that all he wants to do is represent his country, and
Sure.
He's playing out of position.
Sure. Sure. Kind of the other team that we have three people on the team, Nik, is the Netherlands. We have Virgil van Dijk, Cody Gakpo, and Ryan Gravenberch. Ryan Gravenberch hasn't seen any minutes that I know of. Cody Gakpo actually scored in the first game. Looked pretty good. He actually looked really good.
Yeah,
It's if you're a Liverpool fan, it's very exciting because he looked really lively. He started really coming on toward the last few games of the Premier League season, and he's just kind of continued with that with the Netherlands. It was a 0-0 draw against France, but that's okay.
That's a fair result, I would say. They had a
Yeah.
goal that was wrongly disallowed, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I mean, real quick, I know we're going to get to the next. Gakpo needs to play left wing under Arne Slot.
Absolutely. That's the thing.
That's the thing. He was most dangerous for the net. I mean, again, I think Klopp tried something that didn't work, and Klopp then realized that was one of the weirder decisions, right? That maybe
Right.
we spoke about on Kopites Calling, is that Klopp had this fixation of making Cody Gakpo the next Bobby Firmino, and it didn't work out. He's a left winger. Slot needs to play on that left wing.
Right. Virgil, we've already talked about. For Portugal, we have Diogo Jota. I think I had read something today, and maybe this was a factor. I thought I read something that he's got a nagging injury, or he picked up an injury in training or something like that. That's the only thing I can hope for. The reason he's not been in any games.
Yeah, he did play their first game.
Did he?
Yeah, that's concerning from a Jota. He gets injured too easily.
Yeah.
If he's still, I mean, that's like.
I don't know if that's been confirmed or anything. I thought I had seen that on something, as I'm looking at various feeds and checking things out. I thought I had seen that he picked up a little bit of an injury, but why, if he's not injured, why on earth are you playing a Cristiano Ronaldo? I know it's Cristiano Ronaldo, and I get it. I get that he's a legend. I understand he's a legend. I know all that. I'm not blind to that. But what he needs to do is Jota needs to be in, and Ronaldo needs to come off the bench and spell him. That's the way I see it.
I agree. To be honest, I haven't watched many of Portugal's games. It's just been tough with the games being during the day. Actually watching them, but I couldn't agree more with that statement. Ronaldo is Ronaldo, right? Of course, he's going to be on the team, and he's going to be there, and he's going to come to the tournament. But he's also 39 years old.
Absolutely, so, playing in Saudi Arabia against no talent.
Yeah. So, and if you're Roberto Martinez, the head coach of Portugal, who I kind of like, I like Roberto Martinez.
I always have.
Yeah, I think he's been okay. He didn't do so hot as the Belgian national team manager, but if he wants to keep this position as Portugal manager, I think that you have to start bringing in the new guard, right? I mean, Ronaldo.
Right.
It's impressive that he's still able to even go at 39 and play in this high level tournaments. I'm not denying that. You didn't deny that. We're not denying that. He's talented. I get it. But I do think that there's players on the bench that could maybe put the game to bed a little easier.
Absolutely.
Because Ronaldo just can't offer what he used to, and these players
Absolutely.
can offer the youth, and then you bring in a Ronaldo at the 60th, 50th minute, whatever the case may be, and then that's that. I don't know. I think Portugal though they look good.
No, absolutely.
I think so. It's weird. This Euros right now. It's the nail on favorites, and I'm sure we'll get to France, but the nail on favorites in England and France have not been performing well at all.
No. I mean, France won a game. Ibrahim Konate plays for France.
Yeah.
I don't think he's had any minutes in this tournament either.
Nope, he has not, which is it's sad to see because he's typically had that position. I think he came into the camp with an illness. If I recall, the first game he was sick with something, had like a virus.
I think Deschamps said something about the fact that there was something going on with Konate, and then he just didn't get in the last game at all. I don't know if it's still a lingering thing, but to your point with Jota, that's kind of what Konate is. If there's anybody that's going to get hurt or pick up an illness, it's going to be Konate. It really is.
We'll see if Slot hires new medical staff or something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But anyway, France has not looked good. They won their first game on an own goal. I mean, come on. And they lost Mbappe in the process to a broken nose. I don't know how Mbappe is going to come back and try to play. I know he has that thing on his face, but with a freshly broken nose, I don't know if you want to be trying to go up and win a header and have somebody's errant elbow hit you in the face. I don't think that'd be a lot of fun. So I don't know what his status is going to be moving forward.
Doesn't sound safe. I mean, I'm sure he can be medically cleared, quote unquote, but I wouldn't want to risk. I don't know. He's a competitor. I'm sure we'll see. It is unfortunate because I'm sure we all love watching Mbappe play.
Sure.
But yeah, France has looked like a shadow of themselves compared to how they looked in the World Cup in Qatar and previous years before that.
Sure. Nik, we have 4 players that are involved in the Copa America. Argentina started their campaign on last Thursday, and Alexis McAllister just does what he does for Argentina. He had an assist in the game, and they looked good. The shocking thing to me, Nik, and shocking is the wrong word because I should not use this word when describing this person. Lionel Messi was the man of the match.
I watched that. I did watch that game because it was at night. I mean, he had a beautiful assist to Lautaro Martinez. I mean, the guy is. We've talked about him on Kopites Calling. He is just talent personified when it comes to the game of soccer, the game of football, because he is naturally gifted, and I'm sure that he could. I'm glad he's playing this tournament.
I am too. I am thrilled.
I don't think he's going to be a part of the 2026 World Cup team, and I don't think he should. I don't think he should be, right? I mean, similar to the Ronaldo situation, you have to let the new guys come in. But for this to potentially be his quote-unquote swan song with the Argentina team, and maybe he'll play some more World Cup qualifying games just because those are still kind of going on in CONMEBOL. So maybe he'll still have some, but I don't think he'll be on that plane. Well, I mean, he lives in the U.S. now, so I guess he doesn't really need a plane. But I don't think he'll be on that final World Cup roster come 2026. He's just an absolute joy to watch. I can't say enough. We can't say enough about him.
But McAllister had another fine game for them, Liverpool player, and it just again shows that the talent level that we have on this team. I think Slot's going to be able to do something with this. I really do.
I think McAllister will benefit greatly from Slot.
I do too.
I think McAllister is a guy that, we thought it was going to be Szoboszlai, considering how hot out the gate he started with Liverpool. We thought we were going to build the midfield around Szoboszlai. It turns out we're building the midfield around Alexis McAllister, and I think it should be that way. Alexis McAllister is just similar to Messi, right? He has this elegancy to the way he plays, and we've touched upon it, on the game.
Right.
Towards the end of the season, right? I mean, how many Kopites Calling did we have him as the man of the match? I mean, he just he would take over when needed. His assist to Julian Alvarez was very smart for Argentina. It was a nice little tap. He is a smart player.
Right. Very smart. Very smart. Another person that was in action last night, and I think he's going to be a big part of Slot's moving forward with Slot is Darwin Nunez, and I know he's taken a lot of flack, but he scores a goal last night, and I was really happy to see it. He's playing for Uruguay, and I love seeing that he got a goal in the opening game of the Copa for his country, and I think he's going to be somebody that's going to benefit under Slot as well.
I agree. I think that this Copa is coming at the right time for a guy like Nunez because he can kind of get away from the Liverpool hate. I hate to say that
Yeah,
word, but the
yeah,
scrutiny he was getting from Liverpool fans, and again, including me, right? I mean, there are some
right,
times where I was just as frustrated as everybody else with him. I mean, but I'm always going to back him. But
right,
I think he needed a change of scenery. He can go play under Marcelo Bielsa, who is a very attacking styled manager. He had this sort of way about the way he sets up his, whenever he was the coach of Leeds. I mean, how many times did that Leeds team win like 5-4? You know what I mean?
right,
Like it was like defending optional. So Marcelo Bielsa now is the Uruguay manager. I think it's a good manager for Nunez to kind of play under for right now.
right,
It's a very tech minded.
right.
And I just think that Nunez needed some joy back in his game. And I think he had, I hate to say that, right? I mean, like it sucks that we had to say that about Liverpool, that he didn't really have that joy towards the end of the season, but he has some joy when he plays for his country. And I saw the goal. It was a very good volley. First time coming from the goal.
Absolutely, it
Very,
was.
very well taken. Yeah.
Yes, yes. Two other players who are in action today. Luis Diaz for Colombia and Allison Becker play later on tonight for Brazil. So those are the players who are involved in the Copa and the Euros. We have other players who are trying to get their countries into World Cup contending spots. Mo Salah is doing that with Egypt, as is Wataru Endo with Japan, who, by the way, is the captain of the Japanese team. Saw a quote from him today, which I thought was just showed the class of that guy. They were talking about Liverpool possibly finding a replacement for him in this transfer market, and his response was, "Well, with his age, it would be smart for them to look for somebody else."
He is, I mean,
I thought that was brilliant. What a great statement.
that's awesome. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm an Endo believer, and he made me believe because he's not wrong, right? I mean, I'm sure we'll get
yeah,
into transfers real quick before we kind of finish up and whatnot with other topics, but it's just as truthful as you can be. I mean, he's what
sure,
31 years. He's 31 years old, so I think
yeah,
31. Yeah, 31 years old. I can't remember. Yeah, 31. I
yeah,
think. So I mean, yeah, like we'd be it'd be kind of ridiculous if we didn't look for someone.
sure. That's what he was saying. He's like, "Oh,
Yeah,
sure, people are gonna look. You're gonna
yeah.
look." Another thing I saw today, Nick, it brought a smile to my face. I saw where Adrian signed a new contract, and he's actually going to be like even on the coaching staff.
Really, I did not
I
see
thought
that.
that was actually kind of cool. If that is in fact a truthful thing, he signed he renewed with Liverpool, and he's not going to be used. I don't know. We still don't know what's going to happen with Cameron Kelleher, who actually is trying to get Ireland qualified as well.
Yeah.
But just before we came on Kopites Calling, I thought I had seen something come across basically saying that he re-signed with Liverpool and he's going to, I don't know, kind of be available to play, but actually kind of
Yeah, a
be
player manager,
yeah, type of thing, but that that's yet to be confirmed. I think I just saw that fly through again, just looking at all the various feeds that we have. But I think that we need to kind of move now, Nick, into the Premier League schedule came out, and the 24-25 schedule came out. I want to highlight a few things. Um, Obviously, during all of this, I'm talking just about the Premier League schedule. There's also going to be the Carabao Cup, the FA Cup. We're in Champions League. A lot of different things flying around, but these are games that are just in the Prim. So the opening game, Slot's opening game, is against the newly what's the word when you're brought up from the other league? Newly promoted
Yeah.
Ipswich Town. We play them on the 17th, and it's an away game. Guess what it is, Nick? It's the early game.
almost like it's a slap in the face to Klopp. You're like, you're gone now, so our first game's gonna be, you know what I mean?
It's the 12:30 game there, 7:30 game for us. It's the early game, and you can just imagine Nick going to Ipswich Town. It's going to be like going to who was the team last year that
Luton.
Luton, yeah, where it's going to be a stadium that looks like it doesn't hold very many people, and it's a little bit rickety, and it's a little bit whatever. But those are the games that are kind of those teams. Can you imagine if you're a player for Ipswich Town and you know that you've been newly promoted and your first opponent is, not Nottingham Forest, it's Liverpool.
Yeah,
You're going to be out there playing like you're possessed to try to do anything in that game.
Yeah.
So that's going to be a fun game to watch. Liverpool seems to struggle when that happens. We had a few years ago, we had Norwich City as our first game. They were newly promoted, and if memory serves me right, I think we won the game 2-1. It was not a foregone conclusion that this was going to be an easy win for Liverpool.
Well, I mean, look at 2 years ago we played Fulham away. Fulham was just promoted again, and we played Fulham away and tied them. It was Nunes that scored his first goal for us. So yeah, I mean, it's weird how this is now becoming a common occurrence where we're playing, a newly promoted team away on the first game of the season. But I think that Ipswich Town is a team, from what I heard, that plays a very good style of football. And I mean, I don't think they're going to be a one and doneer in the Prem. I think that they are going to have the style to stay in the Prem and not be an up and down sort of team. Their manager, Kieran McKenna, was actually, spoken to a lot about potentially taking the Chelsea job because of how well he did at Ipswich. He was also kind of rumored to take over at United if they would have sacked Eric Ten Hag, which they didn't. So I think that it's going to be a fun game, to your point.
Sure.
I don't know. I mean, I can't remember the last time Ipswich was in the Prem. I'm sure, it's available somewhere, but it's someone new, right? I hate that this constant, Norwich, Burnley, Sheffield, Leeds, Southampton, which Southampton are back up. But you know what I mean? The typicals that always come up. I mean, it was good to see Luton. Unfortunately, Luton couldn't get the job done to stay in the league, but it was good to see Luton last year. Good to see Ipswich this year. So, yeah, it'll be fun.
Right. First home game, Nick, is the following week, the 24th, against Brentford. The week after that is our first taste of Man United, and we play them at Old Trafford on the 31st. Moving into October, Nick, the standout game is the 26th against Arsenal. Prior to that game, I say the standout game is Arsenal because of the way Chelsea kind of fell off this year. They started making a little bit of started regaining their footing toward the end of the season, but we play them the week before we play Arsenal. So that's a couple tough games in October. The big game, Nick, is November 30th, and we have Man City at home. So that's something let's start circling that on the calendar right now. I would like to say that this is a big game. It may not be as big a game as I think it is. The 21st of December, we play Spurs away. We have the return game with Man United where we play them at home on January 4th. We go to Man City February 22nd. The Spurs come to us on April 26th. And then in May, the 3rd of May, we have Chelsea away and we have Arsenal at home. And I highlighted those games because, in between that, we got the various other teams, the Wolverhampton Wanderers, the other teams, but those are the teams that have, constantly either been fighting for or in the top four, right outside the top four. We mentioned Ipswich Town just because that's our first game under Slot. It is going to be interesting to see his first home game. The energy in that place is going to be I think it's going to be just the way it was for Klopp's last game. I think the energy level is going to be sky high for Brentford.
And that just shows again Klopp's influence is that every fan that has those tickets to Anfield, that home opening game, they're going to do whatever they can to make that the best possible atmosphere because Klopp would want it that way. Because
Absolutely.
Klopp would want it that way. That's the influence this
Sure.
guy had on the that's the influence he had in the club is that like we went into in his episode where his final game. I mean, he started a chant for Arne Slot. You know what I mean?
Right.
Klopp would want this, and that is in the bag of every supporter that we have to make this as easy of a road to begin. Because I mean, like expectations for Slot in his first season need to be realistic. They can't be crazy.
Right.
They have to be realistic, right? I mean,
Right.
there's gonna be those fans that think that he has to win now, win right away, and of course we'd all love that, but let's make sure he understands what it takes to be a Liverpool manager first.
Well, you're right. There's going to be hiccups. There's going to be moments of we're going, what's kind of going on. As a fan who follows them, I mean, the casual Liverpool fan are going to be the ones that are screaming for him to be gone if he doesn't do something great. The same way they're screaming for Darwin Núñez to be gone. But fans like we are at Kopites Calling, we understand what it is to have those moments where it's not working. I mean, it didn't always work for Klopp. You know what I mean?
No.
I mean, as great of a manager as he was, there were vast stretches where you were like, "One man, what's going on?" And so I think we need to, kind of temper our expectation of what Slot's going to be, and just let the man kind of get his feel for what he's doing as the manager of the Reds. I mean, we got to let him do it. So in between all those things, as I had mentioned, there's still going to be the various domestic cups and Champions League plus the international breaks. So the season, as always, it's just completely jam packed. Transfer markets open, Nick. Have you heard anything? I haven't seen anything happening. I'm thinking that the Euros and the Copa have kind of just slowed things down. I would only venture to those who are listening to Kopites Calling, our fan base. Don't always believe what you see. There's rumors flying around, as there were a couple years ago, where we were going to get Mbappe. Don't always believe what you see. Don't just take it to heart that this is what's happening because, that's not how Liverpool has ever really done business.
No, I mean, and to your point, I mean, I think deals and rumors and things happening in the transfer window are going to be fairly quiet until after the Copa, after
Sure.
well, I mean, especially until after the Euros, right? Because I mean, that's the European competition. It's one of those things where that's fine. I mean, you can get lost in the headlines, but from a Liverpool perspective, I mean, I think that there's maybe 3 key areas, 4 depending on what happens with Kelleher. But the 3 areas are, and it's funny that Endo said it, but the 3 areas would be a defensive mid because Endo is on the older side. It would be a center back to replace Matip because Matip is leaving, and it'd be a right winger for the unfortunate, inevitable, exit of Mo Salah, whenever that is.
Absolutely.
Those would be the 3 that come to mind, right? I mean, and then that also depends on what happens to Luis Diaz because the only rumors I've seen are that Diaz is being targeted by Barcelona, and maybe he wants to go to Barcelona. Maybe he wants to go to Barcelona. I don't know. And
Sure.
hopefully Barca can get we can get a good fee out of them. To be honest, I don't know how I feel about that, but honestly, with Gakpo being able to play left wing, we'll see how that works. But I mean, that's the only really the concrete rumor I've seen out of Liverpool is that Diaz may leave. But in terms of target areas, I'm sure you can agree, Dave. I mean, it's a right wing because we need someone to put pressure on Mo. It's defensive mid because Endo is aging and Bajcetic still isn't ready yet to be in there all the time. And it's a center back for Matip.
I would be really happy if that was what we were able to accomplish in this. I was actually thrilled, Nick, to see that, as we expected, the Saudi League splashed a lot of cash at Allison and he basically said, "I'm really happy at Liverpool."
Yeah, well, I wouldn't. I mean, he's the best. He's not going to tarnish his legacy by going to that league. He
No,
has he he has 5 more great years to give. I mean,
absolutely, yeah.
goalkeeper's that funny position where they kind of play for a long time, and I think he wants to play at Liverpool for as long as possible.
I do too. Um, this is a Liverpool podcast, Nick. We know that. We actually have basically that's what it's all about. We are two American. We're two Americans, and we do have to just briefly. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this. Briefly discuss our foray into the Copa America. We had the U.S. national team had their first game last night against a horribly bad
Terrible.
Bolivia team. I think that me, you, and I don't know, 9 other people off the street could have played as good as Bolivia did. We certainly could have fouled as much as they did. They were fouling all over the place. But um, impressions of that game, Nick? I got mine.
Underwhelming,
Yeah.
which is pretty much how I label every game that has been in the Greg Berhalter era.
Hmm.
It's like I said, I kind of had this segue when we were talking about Southgate. It's very much one and the same where we've now let this guy take over again, because we fired him after
Yep.
Qatar and then we rehired him for Copa. If you think about it, besides, friendlies here and there and the CONCACAF Gold Cup and Nations League, you know, this is the tune-up for the World Cup, right? This is where you're playing against.
This is the dress rehearsal.
This
This
is
is the teams that we have to play.
exactly, and we've trusted a guy again that if he gets this wrong, and I'm to be honest, I'm not holding my breath. I think he will get this wrong. If he gets it wrong, we've now wasted another golden opportunity with this talented group that we have to prepare ourselves to host the World Cup. And I tell you what, I'm not going to be excited for the United States to play in the World Cup in 2026 on home turf because Greg Berhalter has decided to, diminish and completely tear apart the talent that we've had. If we go out of this Copa America and we don't win a knockout game, that's a failure. That's a failure.
Absolutely.
We have to win a knockout game. We have to win a round of 16, quarter. We have to win a game that means something, right? I mean, we're in a group.
Absolutely.
We're in a group with, we beat Bolivia 2-0. It should have been more. We weren't clinical enough front of goal. I can admit that, but it wasn't pretty. We then played Panama. Panama looked pretty decent against Uruguay. I mean, they lost.
Absolutely.
They lost, but Panama's going to be better than Bolivia. And Uruguay, I mean, stick a fork in us. I mean, I don't see us getting anything out of the Uruguay game. Maybe, hopefully, it's high.
Right.
But it's just all eggs in one. All the eggs are in the Greg Berhalter basket yet again. And it's sad because if we don't get over this hump of being able to win a knockout game, then I am not going to have any expectations of us in 2026.
Absolutely. The way I saw the game last night was nice start, very, very nice start. Christian Pulisic with just a nice goal, and then a lot of blah, and then a second half, and then right before the half, Balogun, who up until that point was
quiet.
Unbelievably, he needed to go to decision school. He was so indecisive. He was so indecisive in front of net. I don't even. I was actually stunned. He took the shot then because I thought he was just going to do like he had been doing. But he puts a goal in, and then I saw a second half start where Bolivia had us on our heels. They were in our half of the field, and I'm like, what? Berhalter has to find a way. I don't know what it is, Nick. I don't know what we can do here. Yunus Musa needs to play.
Absolutely. I don't know why. I mean, I know that.
I love Tyler Adams. I'm not. I like Gio Reyna. I do. I like both those guys. I'm not as big on Weston McKennie. I think he's okay. I don't think he's all of that he's supposed to be. But Yunus Musa, when he came in, changed the game to me. I mean, we started then moving forward with speed, and we looked like we were at that point in time going to get the third, fourth goal.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Yunus, I mean, I've always been a fan. I think that if you're going to drop any of those people in that midfield, it would either be Tyler or Weston, just because Gio offers a little bit different in terms of he's an attacking style player.
but he didn't have a very good game. Gio could be the one person that I would see, back to what we did in the World Cup where Gio didn't play. We had Musa in there. We did pretty well.
But the problem with that is then you have three defensive-minded midfielders. So maybe you can.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a good question to be had. I think that
Yeah.
I'll tell you who really should be kicking themselves. Talk about a position that is open for grabs still. Because Balogun hasn't really sold me yet. But Ricardo Pepi should have had 2 goals.
Oh my God.
Point blank in front of the goal. I mean, he could have nailed on his starting position against Panama on Thursday or whenever we play them. I mean, he has to score those.
Nick, you were a striker, Nick. What do you do in you know, the goal's pretty wide, right? I mean, the goal is not a lacrosse goal that's really small. It's pretty wide. He had a lot of different spaces he could have kicked the ball, except for right to the keeper, which is what he did.
Yeah, exactly. I think he needed to open up his hips and just let it
Right.
carry. He needed to open up his hips and let it carry into the far post. He
Right.
instead was very straightforward onto it, and then his body was leaning over. And when your body's leaning over, you can't open your hips, and then of course it goes directly at the keeper.
I think we've gone a long time here, and we could talk forever about the woes of the U.S. not being able to find a number 9. We could do, I mean, like a whole different podcast on that. So I think for our purposes here at Kopites Calling, the idea was to get out what's going on, what's happening moving forward. Anything happens with any of our players in the Euros or anything in the transfer market, we'll get back on here, throw another podcast show together. And we are going to have Liverpool in the States for their preseason, and I'm sure we'll be discussing those matches as well. But anything that you needed to add on this, Nick?
No, happy to be back here again. I mean, it's been a nice little break, but always good to talk some Liverpool and miscellaneous with you, Dave. And yeah, I think that with so much happening this summer, we'll definitely hop on here whenever news breaks or results happen or whatnot. And yeah, we're just trying to keep our fan base, up to date with all things Liverpool.
Absolutely. As always, on Kopites Calling, you'll never walk alone.